Hi and welcome to the channel. I've just made a video about Tartaria, showing that it was not a people of barbarians or a poorly defined or little-known region. And it's real, Tartaria was large and well-organized, and it was erased from history books and encyclopedias. So, why am I now asking if Tartaria is a hoax? Let's see. Yes, Tartaria existed and was powerful, but on the other hand, I think that using the name Tartaria for everything that seems not to fit into the official timeline is a huge mistake. It's very fashionable right now to want to attribute all the wonders of the ancient world to an ethnicity or a people. For some it's the Moors, for others the Semites, the Masons, or even the Anunnaki. I only believe what I see. The rest is only speculation or disinformation. It's not always easy to distinguish true from false between honest researchers who make mistakes, which is normal and human, and on the other side, false prophets with bad intentions. What I personally observe is that there is always a story of an empire, of an entity, or an egregore that seeks to dominate, to impose a world power, and that attacks and enslaves or converts entire peoples, who themselves are organized not in pyramidal systems but in much freer networks or federations. The original peoples, like the Celts, the Tartars, the Aborigines, etc., who lived much closer to nature, who maintained oral traditions. But these oral traditions do not prevent them from having had writings. Moreover, the empire always burns codices, books, libraries, etc., of those it subjugates. I really have the impression of seeing on one side free, organized peoples who live according to natural laws, and on the other, an entity that perpetuates itself through the ages, and that tries to dominate and create a world government that I like to call the Empire. From the point of view of the timeline and the buildings found all over the world, here is what I see concretely. I see major trends. Everything related to dolmens and standing stones, precisely aligned on energetic axes. I also see pyramids, everywhere across the world, from Asia to the Americas, passing, of course, through Egypt. I see Gothic architecture, like cathedrals. Then there are capital-style buildings with columns, with triangular pediments. But when I see Greek and Roman temples and compare them to capitals and other buildings in Germany and America, etc., I don't see why some would be very ancient and others more recent. By copying the style, by fashion. Seriously, no, I don't think so. I think that each civilization, each people or culture has its own style, its own habits and traditions. I think these buildings look like they were built by a single civilization, and that some were simply destroyed and others not. But that's only my opinion. I'll put them together for the moment. There are also castles, but are they all the same? I don't think so. We should dig a little deeper. Obviously, our current society and its cities of skyscrapers, its glass and steel cubes for the so-called elite and entire cities for the excluded, these houses, so poorly insulated, built from toxic materials. And if I have to listen to my intuition to place them on a timeline, I would put them like that. But I don't know, it is pure speculation. But what I see with certainty is that there are different styles, very different styles, and nothing to link them together. And if this is even slightly true, I see a humanity drifting away from simplicity and nature. Could this be the imprint of this egregore that I like to call the Empire, surviving through the ages? Now, to have a history with so many holes in its chronology, to have construction styles so different without real intermediates that could support an idea of evolution over time. There are only two possible causes: the deliberate erasure of entire sections of history or concrete, and physical breaks, such as only large-scale cataclysms can produce. And personally, I think it's both at the same time. If there are cataclysms that reset everything, or almost everything, obviously there are survivors who will try to take advantage over others. Especially if they knew about the arrival of these cataclysms before the others. So by looking at this very rough timeline, I can already come to terms with the fact that our official history is very, very improbable, and that it rather seems there was a succession of civilizations that all ended abruptly. Which brings me back to the Tartaria scam. Obviously, all these civilizations were not all Tartars. And certainly there were great civilizations, or peoples of all colours and races over time and during these great eras. But in my opinion, there have also always been people who lived in rhythm with nature, and others with impulses of domination. And even if I think there were more prosperous periods than others, very certainly in the idea of what the Golden, Silver, Bronze and Iron Age talk about, etc., I don't think all these civilizations were ideal, even if they used free energy and were advanced technologically, etherically, etc. That doesn't mean there wasn't a ruling class crushing the others. When I see these massive structures and buildings, or with monsters looking down on us, it doesn't really give me a very positive impression. It's very imposing. Even dominating or crushing, isn't it? And it always recalls this idea of wanting to go ever higher, like the Tower of Babel. And I don't know if that's how I imagine my ideal world. I also wanted to make a small note about the recent proliferation of channels that are generally called Tartaria this or Tartaria that, and that are nothing more than channels taking advantage of a trend effect to copy the content and work of honest researchers and regurgitate it into AI-generated scripts. The problem is that the message is confused, exaggerated, and above all disconnected from reality. Real researchers show you what they are talking about. All of this is based on observation and logic, not on fables. So beware of these channels. There are many real researchers to follow who are far more worthwhile. So to conclude, Tartaria was a real powerful people with a political system, armies, etc., not a horde of barbarians, not an unknown and vague area. But it is also not the source of all civilization or those who built all these incredible buildings, nor a culture superior to others. On the contrary, certainly a culture that lived on the same footing as many others that were annihilated in the same way. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Think about liking and subscribing to help the channel. And as usual, walk in peace, brother.